Hi there. It's good to be on again. I haven't been on here in a while, maybe 9 months. Anyway, I'm gonna try and get back in the habit of this again, of kind of talking a little bit about how I'm preparing for the sermon before I get to the sermon that I'm preaching. Right now, I've been preaching through the signs in the Gospel of John. There are 7 signs in the Gospel of John. We're on the 5th one. We have 2 more weeks for the next 2 signs, and then we'll be going into a different sermon series during Lent in our church where we'll be looking at the parables in the second half of the Gospel of Luke. Anyway, um, as I get started, I'm working on trying to figure out what exactly I'm preaching on from our text. There are a number of different angles to go. First, you can look at this and talk about how Jesus is the new Moses, coming as a deliverer for his people. Um, this parallel is very clear with the first word at the beginning of the first verse, in the beginning of the verse, where it starts talking about Passover approaching. Then Jesus multiplies the bread. Then afterwards, he talks about how he's bread from heaven. What's bread from heaven? Manna. What is that talking about? The Exodus. What are we looking at here with the Exodus? Immediately before Jesus declares himself bread from heaven, we're talking about um, Jesus having power over the sea, like Moses parting the Red Sea and coming to deliver his disciples from the storm. So, you can, that's one direction I can go with this sermon. Talk about Jesus as um, one who is coming to set us free and liberate us. Um, that only gets part of the story. Also, one mistake we often make when we look at all the miracle stories on water is allegorizing them and talking about the storms of our lives. Well, this is really about the storms of our lives and how we have a hard time dealing with this circumstance and that circumstance, and Jesus can calm our storm and see us through. Um, but the truth is, that's not what this miracle is meant to talk about, the storms of our lives. This is even more tempting in the book of John, because everything has a little bit of allegory and metaphor in the book of John, opposed to Mark, where he's pretty just the facts ma'am kind of gospel. John is using lots of symbolism, and could this be symbolism for that? Um, that's one another direction that preachers go, and that I could go. Another thing is that this talks about is that, um, in a more general sense, is Christ's power over nature. That, especially if you look at the Hebrew culture in the past, the the sea was a place of chaos and evil under the sea, and so it was a place that Jews didn't want to go very often. But Jesus goes there. Jesus goes there, and he not only goes there, but he shows his power over the sea. He's able to trample it underfoot, this chaos, this place of evil, this place that's untamable. And not only is he able to do that, in turn, he's able to um, make it obey him. He's able to calm the storm. He's able to, um, as as Lord, be able to put it under his authority, not only with his feet walking over it, but with his word speaking to it. So then, where do you go with this? Well, you talk about the sermon in a more global sense. You talk about how it applies, I suppose, to oh, things in nature which hurt us, which we struggle with, which we can't control, and that God can. we can trust God in those places where we can't really control what's going on. So those are the things I'm trying to struggle with. Do I go with the oh, deliverance theme? Do I go with the God is in control over um, all the all of nature and all of the powers of evil that surround us? Those two kind of tie together, but you can't completely do it all. Or do I go the route that biblical scholars would say not to, but that preachers often do, and talk about the storms and pains of our life? Um, so that's what I'm thinking through. So I'd appreciate your insight, your help, um, maybe how you would read or interpret this passage. I'd encourage you to read it yourself. John chapter 6, verses 16 and following, where Jesus calms the storm and walks on the water. Okay, I'm not as used to this as I used to be. So this probably wasn't my best talk, but um, you can take it for what it's worth and offer your input from there. How would you preach it? What would you say? What would you add to it? Um, Also, one other thing that's really interesting about this that we find about a lot of things is that when you're preaching a sermon and you're looking at a passage, um, it's easy to have a hard time narrowing down your sermon to one thing as opposed to um, drawing a sermon out of a passage. And when I wasn't preaching, I didn't really recognize that, but as I've become preached more and more, and as I've taught more and more, I've learned that that's the case as you do exegetical kinds of preaching. All right, thank you.